This V-Strom Transalp. I was not brought up with these bikes, and this to me is not particularly exciting. You see, I was brought up with Dakar, Enduro, and all things technical off-road. And I think the modern adventure bike is the same.
It's been trending heavily in one direction: more suspension, more off-road, taller, and more Pol Tarres. But I'm not Pol Tarres, and I bet that you're probably not too. Way back when, at a time when adventure riding was younger, the bikes weren't like this. They weren't overgrown semi-enduro bikes. There was a whole class of bikes where the seat heights were low, the ability medium, and the fun factor pretty high. Bikes like BMW's F650 GS single and F650 GS twins. Good but not exciting, cheap, functional, surprisingly fun and no frills. Good for those whose ambition isn't mountaintop single track or don't have a bottomless wallet. Capable of ripping on the road and taking you across an entire continent via dirt. In 2024, that class is back. Budget friendly, significantly better, and dare I say it, worth getting excited about. In fact, I'd go as far as to say these two bikes are adventure bikes as adventure bikes were, just better. Spec sheets, looks, and marketing have a significantly bigger effect than we all like to pretend. This is a proven fact.
For example, how can a bike this damn low to the ground go off-road? Surely this is a problem.
If you read mainstream press or you spend too long on forums, it is. And the V-Strom, well, is less powerful and heavier than the Transalp, so clearly it's going to be lethargic and turn like a whale on a beach. Plus, it's a V-Strom and they're probably the most boring bike since the Transalp.
But when we take this spec sheet and we pop it next to some very popular other adventure bike models, it might suggest that maybe if we called the V-Strom a DR Big, or we made the Transalp look a damn sight more Dakar, it would probably have a very big perception shift.
After all, the Honda is nearly the same weight as, has just 10mm less suspension travel than, and makes more power than a Tenere 700, with a lower center of gravity, better electronics, and the Suzuki pitches in with 10mm more suspension, a lower seat height, and suspension that actually works.
The reality is that this spec sheet has got very little to do with how this test went and how I now view the category that I'm going to call adventure trail bikes. This also isn't, this is a script.
Now, quick disclaimer. As with every test we do, I prep the bikes as in this Mini Tip Monday. I fitted Dunlop Trail Max Raids to both bikes, and I did so using the Rabaconda Street Tyre Changer. I've been really impressed over the last few tests with how well this tyre works on and off-road for adventure riding. It's proving to be a great test tyre, and honestly changing this many tyres without scratching rims has only been possible because of this Rabaconda. I then checked the suspension sag with the Motul Slacker on both bikes before we rode. It wasn't really a great story. Both bikes ran softer than a marshmallow, but we'll come on to this later. As with every bike review I do, we're provided these bikes directly from the manufacturer's press departments and are allowed to be independent with our opinions. Thanks for the patience. Let's get back to the riding.
We're conditioned by history to expect certain things. We expect Hondas to be quality, well-built, and in recent times maybe a little dull.
And yet, nestled under that white and blue exterior is a bike that is nothing like that. It has a lightness and a nimbleness that feels incredible to ride. It cuts through corners like a bike on rails, has an ease of use that is instantly comforting to ride. Now, more importantly, the way it handles is fun. Like it is genuinely, seriously fun. The engine kind of fits that same personality. It's at its best when it's revving hard, and then you get a frantic, lively feeling bike. It rips over 5,000 RPM, and under that, it's really quite mellow and slightly underwhelming. It encourages you to ask for more and really rewards you for doing so. While the engine is fun, that intensity is intense. It doesn't need you to ride it aggressively all the time, it's not a 125, but the real standout for me is how much that handling of the Transalp looks after you. Because it's so nimble and it's got this incredibly good feeling at the tyres, you get a bike that is really forgiving of your mistakes. Run a bad line in a corner and it will let you change direction instantly. Lose your balance off-road and it'll let you catch back up without punishing you. It's a rider-friendly, lively little bike, and the Suzuki, well, the Suzuki is also everything you wouldn't expect. Where the Transalp is this frantic, sharp-feeling ride, the V-Strom is smooth, planted and solid in a reassuring way.
Heavy is good, heavy is reliable. If it doesn't work, you can always hit him with it.
It has hands down the best engine of any middleweight adventure bike, pulling firmly from low RPM in any gear and continuing right to the top of the rev range. The engine is also buttery smooth, has little vibration or chugging, and is blessed with superb fueling. When you combine that with a positive and smooth gear change and a great quick shifter, you get a ride that feels much quicker off the mark than the Transalp, but also much bigger and more purposeful than its 800cc's would suggest. It is a true standout engine and a superb adventure bike tool. When you combine that engine with suspension that feels almost luxuriously smooth, soaking up bumps, tracking the ground and generally feeling like something you'd expect from a higher end bike, that Suzuki bucks the trend of everything you expect it to be.
This comparison is turning into way more of a dogfight than I expected.
You know what else is bucking the trend? Outback Motortrek and their outrageously strong crash bars and sump guard. Now the Transalp came to us very naked and exposed, and the keen-eyed among you will have noticed that that soft underbelly doesn't look so soft.
I added a full protection combo to the Transalp from the sponsor of this video, Outback Motortrek, because the underbelly of this, well, it was a disaster waiting to happen without it.
Outback Motortrek are the crash protection you choose if you want something stronger than Hercules. They're built to be the ultimate protection and tested to perform through the infamous crash testing process that Outback pioneered. By throwing their bikes hard on the ground, they learn what works and what doesn't. The bars on this Transalp are something else too. By using thick 2mm walled steel tubing and hand MIG welding, combined with some thoughtful mounting points, incredible rigidity, and a sump guard that provides superb coverage, the Outback Motortrek crash bars and sump guard combos are as strong as it gets. Andy even decided he'd ram a rapidly closing gate to see if they worked. Turns out they're gate-proof.
What are you doing down there, fella?
I know. You did that on purpose. Yeah. I saw you push the gate.
It doesn't take a genius to understand that both these bikes will have limitations. By its very nature, adventure bikes are limited.
The ground clearance of both of these bikes is not much. 2 centimeters less than a T7, more like 4 less than a KTM 890 Adventure R. It's very clear that both of these bikes were not designed with peak off-road performance in mind. The Suzuki feels weighty, and that is probably its biggest limitation.
On-road, it handles in a smooth, patient way, rolling into corners rather than snapping in a new direction. It still turns well, but it has the poise and presence of a significantly bigger bike than the Transalp. Off-road, I think the same thing occurs. The V-Strom hustles along trails, dirt roads and 4x4 tracks well. The plushness of the suspension, combined with an ability to lift the front wheel with ease, meant on the quicker trails the V-Strom is a blast.
The other limitation the Suzuki has is a slightly loose feeling at the tyres. The little old V-Strom has got an interesting feel to it. I don't really know if there's any grip or not, which is not something I normally struggle with. Andy seems to know exactly what's going on. Looks really comfortable.
This is made more noticeable by the exceptional Honda chassis feel. But I think the extra plush suspension setup combined with a slight imbalance in the front to rear balance of the bike make it feel a touch vague. The static sag was about 25% front and rear on both bikes, when it should be way closer to 10%, and the rider sag should be around 30%, fully loaded. The long and the short is that it's sprung softly, and while the Honda is no different, it deals with it better. With the Suzuki, we put more weight towards the front of the bike by pushing the forks through the clamps with positive results. We only moved them 1 small twig's worth, but I think I'd happily have gone to 2 twigs. Small but positive, and that indicates maybe you could solve that with a little more setup tweaking.
As for the Honda, its limitations are really quite different.
On the whole, it is a great bike for mashing along the kind of trails you see in this video, changing direction in an instant and feeling light and lively. It has this feeling in the chassis, a balance at low speed, a precision at faster speeds, that reminds me so much of my memory of what it feels to ride an OG Africa Twin.
Even the suspension, how it's kind of bouncy but still decently effective, is a similar experience. Now, it doesn't have the sophistication of the V-Strom, but it still rode all of the trails that we rode pretty damn well.
It bounces more on a bigger bump, bottoms slightly easier, but it never does anything that makes it feel scary or mismatched to the rest of the bike. When the trail technicality got closer to our riding ability limits...
Oh, am I going to regret that? Absolutely, that is an awful life choice. Don't be afraid to go backwards, kids.
The Transalp was easier to ride. It needed less skill because it's not throwing its weight around as much, and it has less to throw around. It is significantly lighter and a fair bit smaller feeling, and that requires less skill to do the same technical riding. Now, we'll never be doing 3-foot drops or riding massive rocks on these 2 bikes without some serious modification. But once you accept that, these 2 bikes would make superb BDR, Trans-Euro Trail, or ACT bikes. 3 days of riding and 400 miles will teach you a lot about a bike. As we rode more, understood more, and the sun finally came out, these bikes showed their potential. The Honda is very close to the bike it can be and is a very good bike. The electronics are okay, but only just okay. The menus are easy to navigate, understand, and use if a little intense. The traction control is subpar and it's incredibly intrusive. The ABS does the job off-road but isn't the best, and if you buy this bike, I would highly recommend speccing the quick shifter. The spec we have is the base of base models and it is lacking. It had 0 protection underneath, no 12-volt power for accessories, no handguards, and it needs them to reach the adventure trail potential. The interesting part of this is that if you spec the 2 bikes to the same level, the price gap of £1,000 just fades away.
The V-Strom is in a different position. In some ways, it is already very close to its potential. The engine, for example, is the standout in the middleweight adventure bike class. It is incredible.
The quick shifter is a delight, and I find the simplistic electronics both well implemented and easy to use. I'd prefer labels over letters and numbers, but that doesn't change how well they work. For me, the potential the V-Strom has is tucked away a little bit more. In there, I think more precision and feeling of the ground can be gained with some small suspension tweaks. My gut feeling is that respringing the Transalp properly will result in its valving being a little more overrun, and on the Suzuki, it'll be quite a big improvement in feel and feedback, but it will increase the seat height. If, however, you do not care about fettling your bike, don't stress it.
The sun is gone, the light is nearly done, the ISO on the camera is really high, and we probably need to get to the point. Which of these bikes is best, and which of these bikes is right for you? And the answer after 3 days of riding is I don't really know. The Transalp is an exceptional bike with a great chassis. It's lively and fun. It's best suited to twisties, and it's a little better if you get lost or you find yourself out of your comfort zone or you're a smaller rider. The V-Strom is better at all of the other stuff. It's comfortable, it's a great mile cruncher, and it's really exceptional on fast flowing roads.
Whatever your poison, one thing is certain. These 2 bikes filled a gap in the adventure bike market that needed filling, and they've done something really special. They've made this class of bikes that didn't really capture the imagination enjoyable and absolutely worth getting excited about. Andy and I had a superb time riding them. They are fantastic gravel road do-it-all bikes that will happily take you across large portions of the earth, and they're gonna make it fun. Want to ride around Iceland, do the Oregon BDR, or go for a rip to the cafe on a Sunday? Done. With cash to spare, a seat height south of the stratosphere, and a grin spread across your face.